Hello, good evening, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Can you guys see me? Can you hear me? Is everything working fine? Can we get started? Yeah?
All good on my end.
Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to all of you. Welcome back for those who have already attended the A2 workshop yesterday. And thank you for joining the event in slightly in advance today. It was much easier for me to just to check the attendance list. So, and again, for those for which tonight is the first workshop, make sure you join the meeting sufficiently in advance, so I have enough time to go through the attendance list before we start. And just like I said yesterday, and sorry to repeat myself, but some of you are here for the first time tonight. When you sign up for the workshops, make sure that you follow the payment instructions. Make sure that you follow the steps. Do not forget to send your ID code through WeChat or through PayPal, otherwise it might be a bit complicated for me to know who you are. And once you have sent the payment, please do not forget to click on the confirmation button at the bottom of the page, so I receive a notice that just tells me, yeah, someone has registered for a workshop. Okay, so make sure that you follow these two steps. Don't forget your ID code, and make sure you click on the confirmation button. Again, that's going to be easier for me. Okay, and I promise I will not say that again in the future. Okay, so this is our first workshop that is specifically dedicated to AS economics. And today we have about 2 hours together to go through the first topics of the AS syllabus, of the current AS syllabus. You know that the coming academic year is the last one during which we will stick to the current syllabus, and there will be an update, a pretty significant update for the next examination in 2023. Important updates in terms of the content, but also there will be some changes in terms of the assessment objectives. There will be only 3 assessment objectives instead of 4, and format of the examination is going to change as well. Later in the year, I will schedule a workshop to brief you guys about, okay, what's going to change in terms of the content, the assessment objectives, and the examinations. So you have some tools to prepare your students as well as possible. And for your new AS students, it's going to be a bit special because next year in June 2022, sorry, in June 2022, they will take the AS examination based on the current syllabus, but in A2, so in June 2023, they will take the A2 exam based on the new syllabus. Okay, so that's going to be a bit tricky. And again, I will schedule a workshop just to share some advices and tips on how you can approach this special group of students who's gonna like navigate between the 2 different syllabi. Okay, so what's the plan for today? Today we need to cover the very first topic of the AS syllabus. Let me just show you something before we start. So this is the current AS syllabus. So of course we will only focus on chapter 1 today. And honestly, I don't really like the way this chapter is organized. It doesn't make much sense to me, right? We start with scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. But then, for example, you see you have factors of production like in a separate part. I feel like it makes more sense to put that together, right? Because if you talk about scarcity, of course, you talk about resources, so you should talk about factors of production. So usually I put it together. And then same thing, once we have understood what the basic economic problem is, it feels logical, at least to me, it makes sense to talk about economic systems, because essentially an economic system is something that tries to solve at least to provide a solution to the basic economic problem. So again, to me, it makes sense. I find it more logical to put everything together. And in the first PPT that we are going to go through, we're going to go through this PPT today together, you'll see that I combine part A, part C, and part D. Okay, I put all these together because I think they belong together. They should not be organized like this. And we will also go through a second PPT, and you can already find all the resources on the website that I have named some key economic concepts, which is essentially a PPT that introduces some very important ideas or concepts we use all the time in economics. And again, very useful for your students to build up foundations. So we'll talk about what do we have in the syllabus. We'll talk about, yes, the term ceteris paribus. We'll talk about the decision of the margin. We'll talk about time periods, specialization, and the division of labor. So all these ideas, the economic structure. So all these ideas I have put them in a PPT that is dedicated to all these basic economic concepts. So yeah, again, I don't really like the way the syllabus is organized for chapter 1. Okay, I think, but don't worry, the content, everything that the entire syllabus is going to be covered, everything your students need to know is covered in the PPTs. Let's have a quick look at the documents available on the website. So there are quite a few today because, again, we will go through 2 PPTs together, but they are the same types of documents. First, we have concept cards. I will show you what this is. This is essentially a list of keywords, key terms that you can use for your students to review. I'll show you that once we are done with the first PPT. A list of definition. The PPT for the students, the PPT for yourself, the teacher version and the student version. I will show you the difference. A summary, which is likely to be very useful for your students, for them to be able to review more efficiently. And there is also an archive here where you have the essay questions organized by topic. So all the essay questions that relate to the basic economic problem and economic systems. And you have the exact same list of files for the second topic, some key economic ideas. And again, just like for the A2 workshop, for each document, you have the Word version if you want to edit it, and you have a PDF version if you want to print it right away. So that, again, the objective is to save some time. Okay, I think I'm done with the introduction. Do you guys have any questions before we get started and before we start going through this first topic, the basic economic problem? Do you have any questions, or are we ready to move on? All good? Okay. So this basic economic problem is usually something that is not very challenging for both teachers to teach and students to learn, but still there are some details that really matter, and that's what I want to stress during tonight's workshop. And also I want to share with you the way in which I approach this topic, especially the structure of my lesson. So there is no lesson plan. I have not uploaded a lesson plan on the website as a resource. But if you follow this PPT step by step, you'll see that everything, well, at least to me, and I hope to you, everything makes sense, and everything, like the different steps are closely connected. And I feel like it's easier for the students to build up their knowledge and understanding of this topic. So how do we start? So of course, as most of you currently do it, I guess, you start with the notion of needs and wants. What is a need? Anything that is essential to our survival. So these are the typical examples that we use. All right, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is too basic. And wants, it's non-essential. I like to use this word, like essential for needs, non-essential for wants, but still, so it's non-essential, but it provides satisfaction. So you can live without it, but it makes your life better, essentially. And you can take any example you want. It's quite easy. When you use examples, make sure you use examples of goods and services, because most of the time we tend to focus too much on goods and we forget about services. So that's why I introduced like a massage, manicure, to have like both examples of goods and services. And, we often say this is something that you can ask your students. If you ask them, is food a need or a want? And well, most of them will tell you, well, food is a need. We need food to survive. Yes, it's true to some extent. You need at least some food every day. You need to have a certain input of intake of calories, or you will die. But let's be honest about it. Most of the food that we eat is non-essential, right? We like to eat. So the non-essential food is definitely a want. It's not a need, right? If you go to a restaurant and the quantity of food that you order goes way beyond your needs, right? I think we all agree with that. Same thing with drinks, right? When you go out on Friday evenings to the bar with your colleagues, and when you order your fifth or your sixth pint of beer, I think we agree that this is not a need, right? Same thing for clothing. If you have 25 pairs of shoes, or if you have 24 ties, again, this is definitely not a need. So I think it's interesting to emphasize that when we talk about food and drinks, for example. All right, and the key idea, as you know, for needs are limited, wants are unlimited. And this is the main relevant difference between these two concepts. Sorry, there is always something else we want to improve our satisfaction. Okay, so far so good, no problem. And then we can talk about resources, because we know, right, we have needs, we have wants, we must satisfy them. To satisfy them, we must consume goods and services. And if we want goods and services, if we want goods and services to be available, we must produce them. And to produce them, we need resources. So you can give a very broad definition of a resource, anything that you can use to produce something else. You can also use the word input, okay? Input, output. It's always a useful way to, or useful key term. And then you can stress that all resources are limited. So then you're gonna tell me, yeah, that's not true. Some resources are unlimited. And sometimes students, they will give you the example of air, and the quantity of air, the quantity of oxygen is unlimited. No, of course not. The quantity of air that is present on the planet, on Earth, is very big, definitely, but it is limited. Okay, limited just means that it is not infinite. There is not an infinite quantity of oxygen or air on the planet. It's just very, very big. Then they will tell you sunlight. All right, so essentially the energy that comes from the sun. Same thing, it's a very large amount of energy, but this is not an infinite amount of energy. So you can essentially summarize by saying all resources are limited. If you have an example of a resource that is unlimited that is available in an infinite amount over a given period of time, please give it to me, but I don't think you will find any example. All resources are limited. They are available in a limited quantity over a given period of time. All of them. I've never really found any exception. All right. Just say that. Okay, some resources are available in very large quantity, of course, but they are still limited. And whether their availability depends on a time, it might depend on seasons, for example, and it depends on locations. Okay, if you say something like water, is water limited or unlimited? Well, it's always limited, but we have a large quantity of water available or a small quantity of water available. It depends on where you are, of course, and it depends on the season, the current season. So if you are in the deserts during a summer, it's likely that you will have less water than if you are in, let's say, New Zealand during spring, something like that. Okay, so Essentially, the amount of resources that we have depends on time and location. And then there is an important keyword that you gotta teach to your students. It's the concept of competing uses, which is the idea that when you have a resource, there are several things you can produce with it. And almost all resources have competing uses, and that's why we have to decide what to do with them, right? If you could only do one thing with one resource, you would not really have an economic problem because you would not have the choice. Why do we have a problem? Because there are several things we can do with resources. And then you can go through a first activity with them, a first exercise. They can work in groups, they can work individually. You can ask them to list 4 different resources. You can try. So we have not yet studied the factors of production, but well, you can try to guide them to find examples from the different factors of production. And for each resource that they identify, try to ask them, all right, so if you have this resource, tell me 2 things you could produce with this resource, okay? Now, 3 questions. Is money a resource? Is time a resource? Is space a resource? I think it's quite important, especially for the first question. Is money a resource? It is not, because there is nothing you can produce with money. Okay, it's very important that you emphasize that to the students. Money is just something that allows businesses, well, mostly businesses, to purchase the resources that they need, yes, but it is not a resource in itself. You can ask them, do you need money to produce a car? No, you don't need money to produce a car. You need engineers, you need steel, you need managers, but you do not need money. Money is just something you use to get those resources. Time, is it a resource? I usually see that as an enabler. You need time for the factors of production, for the resources to be able to produce something, right? If you have resources, but you do not have sufficient time to allow these resources to produce anything, then your output is going to be 0. You will not have any output. So you could consider time as a resource. It is more like something, a condition that allows the other resources to do their job. And space, is space a resource? Well, same thing. Yes, space can be considered a resource. For example, an office space, or any you can produce storage. For example, if you have a room, you can consider that space is a resource. You can produce some services. Okay, but space is not very important, but you can really talk about money and time. Right. Now, once we have talked about resources, you can ask them, how many resources do we have? And the answer is obviously there are many, many, many. There are thousands of different resources. So it's a bit messy. So what we do to organize things, we try to classify all these possible resources into different categories. And economists, they have identified 4 different categories of resources, 4 groups of resources, if you want, 4 groups of similar resources. And we call these 4 groups the factors of production. All right, so then you can name them, quite simple, and you can give examples of each factor of production, and you can ask them to try to find more. All right, so that's natural resources. I say that labor is human resources, just to keep things simple. Okay, land, natural resources; labor, human resources; capital, man-made resources. So we have the same format of definition for all the factors of production. And then enterprise, essentially, I just say this is what includes all entrepreneurs. And of course, we need a definition of what is an entrepreneur. So I think these 4 definitions of the 4 factors of production are quite simple. They are easy to remember because they have the same format, includes all blah, blah, blah. And I give examples of each fact of the 3 first factors of production. Sometimes teachers, they give examples of famous entrepreneurs, and it's a good idea. So if you want to ask the students to give or to name famous entrepreneurs, it might be a good idea. All right, and now there's a second task, a second exercise that you can do with your students. You can actually skip it because this is a bit beyond the syllabus. So if you want to skip it, it's fine, but I actually like to do it to ask them to explain the difference between a renewable resource and a non-renewable resource. All right, so just the idea about is the stock fixed or can it increase over time? That's essentially the difference. And you can ask them about mineral resources like oil, for example. You can ask them, is oil a renewable resource? And actually it is when you think about it, but in a very, 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 very long run. If you wait for millions of years, the stock of oil, coal, and other mineral resources will increase. But of course, it's not relevant to us. Okay, we're not going to wait for millions of years to have more mineral resources or more coal, oil, and so on. So that's why we consider that oil is non-renewable in the short run, if you want. And then there is a pretty interesting distinction between what is a renewable resource and what is a sustainable resource. Renewable, it's quite easy. It's just can the resource, how can I phrase this? Can the stock of the resource increase over time? Okay, if you cut a tree, okay, or if you cut trees, the forest is going to grow back up in the future, so that makes it renewable. Sustainable is a bit different. Sustainable is essentially, are we still gonna have this resource in the future? So it depends on two things. It depends on the rate at which we use the resource, and it depends on the rate at which the resource renews itself. So I usually take the example of a lake, and the resource that I consider is fish. And I tell them, okay, imagine that you are a fisherman and there is a lake near your house. And let's say there is 100 fish in this lake, and every year there are 5 new fish, okay, 5 baby fish in this lake. If you catch only 2 fish per year, you're very bad at fishing, only 2 fish per year, then fish is going to be a sustainable resource. Why? Because the rate at which the resource renews itself, 5 per year, is greater than the rate at which you use it, only 2 per year. But if you catch 10 fish every year and you only have 5 baby fish every year, then this resource is non-sustainable because in the long run, there will be no more fish in the lake. Okay, so I feel like it's interesting to distinguish between these two types of resources, renewable and sustainable resource. And finally, it might be interesting to distinguish between the fixed capital and the working or the circulating capital. And the easiest way to explain it is just to say, right, the fixed capital is everything, all the man-made resources that stay in the factory. Okay, so it could be the building itself, could be all the machines that you use, so everything that stays. And the circulating capital, the working capital, is anything that goes into the factory that is being transformed and that goes out. Okay, so like raw materials. If you have, let's say you are a company that produces computers, and so you purchase some processors, some chips from another company, you transform it, and then at the end of the day, you have a laptop coming out of your factory. Then this chip, this computer chip, is working capital. It is something that has gone into, or that went into your factory, has been transformed, and then became part of a final product. Okay, so yeah, might be interesting to be a bit more precise about these types, these natural resources and the different types of capital. All right. So then you can simply talk about the rewards that go to the owners of the resources, okay? Because we know how this works. If you own a resource, then you can sell it to firms, because the firms, they need resources to produce, okay? And in exchange, you receive an income, and the income that goes to the owners of each factor of production, we give it a name. Okay, and it's just a name. So for land, we call that rent, for labor, wage, capital interest, enterprise profit. So then why? Why do we choose these names? Well, there is no clear reason. So for labor, wage makes sense, right? I think we okay, wage or salary, so this makes sense. For enterprise, all right, profit. If you are an entrepreneur, you are driven by the profit motive, so we can understand that what you get out of it is essentially profit. So this I can understand, it makes some sense to me. But then land, why do we call that rent? Capital, why do we call that interest? I tried to read a lot of to find some convincing explanation in textbooks. I tried to find some websites or some YouTube videos that would, be able to explain this properly. But my conclusion is that these are just names. Okay, these are just names that we give to the income that goes to each factor of production. So there is no clear intuition, there is no clear logic behind these names, especially rent and interest. So I advise you just tell the students these are the names that economists have given to these different types of income. All right, so I have a question from Mitchell. Isn't money a resource for a bank? That's a good one. Isn't money a resource for a bank? Give me a second to think about it. So your idea is, well, not quite, because what you're saying, Mitchell, is that money is creating more money, right? I think that's what you have in mind. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, but actually when they loan you money, actually sometimes they don't have that money, but they're allowed to create it. But
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
then someone pays them back, and then they are able to kind of loan that out. So if they
Yeah,
didn't
but
have much money to like in their reserves, then they wouldn't
all right,
loan it out.
but actually, let's go back to the definition of what is a resource. A resource is something that we can use to produce a good or a service. Money is not a good, money is not a service, right? So
But isn't a loan a service?
of course, a loan could be considered a financial service. So are you saying that through money, this makes it possible to make loans or to provide this type of financial service?
Yes.
Well, you could argue, but this is yeah, this is not very clear cut. So I would yeah.
Right. That's not for like the basic.
I would avoid that,
know.
especially if for a first lesson, I would try to avoid using these very tricky examples. Can money be considered a resource if it makes lending possible, and if we consider lending a service, maybe this makes some sense, but yeah, I would try to keep it as simple as possible for the first lesson.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, but sometimes students, they say, yeah, but money can create more money. Yes, it's true, but money is not a good, money is not a service in itself. So that's why you should not consider money a resource. But yeah, it's a good question, Mitchell. Thank you very much. All right, so we've talked about resources, we've talked about the factors of production. Now we are ready to talk about scarcity. So you can just summarize. All right, we know that we have unlimited wants but limited resources. The consequence is that resources are scarce. That's a very important keyword. And again, keep it simple. This just means that we don't have enough. And this is the difference between something being limited and something being scarce. Okay, the meaning is different. Something is limited if it's not available in an infinite quantity. Okay, something is scarce if you don't have enough. Okay, so enough, you don't have enough means that you compare what you have and how much you want to use. That's the idea. So that's the definition that I use. I hope it's clear. The scarce resource is one that is not available in sufficient quantity to produce all the goods and services that we want and which require this particular resource. Okay, again, remember, resources have competing uses. There are many things we can do with them. If we cannot produce everything we want with a given resource, then we say that the resource is scarce. And you know that the opposite is a free resource or a free good, but we'll talk about that later. And of course, scarcity is relative. So be very careful if you try to ask your students, all right, which resource can be considered scarce, which resource is likely not to be scarce. please keep in mind that this really depends on the location. Some resources that are scarce in China might be abundant in France. Some resources that are scarce in April might be available in very large quantity in June. All right, so keep this in mind. Okay, scarcity is a relative concept. And now we are ready. We have all the ingredients. We have moved in a logical way to bring us to start introducing the basic economic problem. Because we don't have enough resources, we cannot satisfy all of our wants. So we have to decide how to allocate these scarce resources between competing uses. In order to do what? In order to essentially achieve the highest possible of satisfaction. You could say in order to satisfy as many wants as possible, right? But overall, we want to use these resources to generate the highest possible level of satisfaction. You could say that we want to maximize total surplus, but your AS students do not know what this is yet. So keep it simple. All right, this is the basic economic problem. Good. So far, so good. Do you have any questions before we move on? We're going to talk about opportunity cost. Do you have any questions up to now about needs and wants, resources, factors of production, scarcity, and the basic economic problem? That should be okay for everyone, I guess. But let me know if you have any comment or any question about it. All good? Right. All right. So money, time, and space on resource. Money is not a resource, definitely. Time is something that enables resources. Okay, with no time, even if you have resources, but if you don't have enough time to let them work, then you will not produce anything. You could consider that a form of natural resource, time. Okay, time is not created by humans, right? And space is a resource. You need office space, but you can consider that space could be an example of capital if you consider an office space, or if you consider a warehouse. Okay, when you produce a warehouse, you essentially create a workable environment. You produce a space in which you can actually produce something. Okay, so you could classify this as a capital good. But if you look at a field, for example, the field is also space when you think about it. So in this case, this would be more like a natural resource. So you definitely need space if you want to grow potatoes. So that's why space can be considered a resource. Okay. So let's talk about the concept of opportunity cost. Again, that's quite should be quite straightforward. And actually, I like to start with the idea of a decision. What is a decision or choice? That's essentially a situation where you have several options that we call alternatives, and you have to choose one. And once you choose one, the others are no longer available. And this is the concept of mutually exclusive. This is something that your students have probably studied in probability. Mutually exclusive means when you choose one, the others are gone. Okay, you cannot just choose several at the same time. So how do we make a decision? And actually, we make a lot of decisions every day. I believe we make around 40,000 decisions every day. I should check the data. I'm not quite sure, but you can Google it. How many decisions do we make every day? So of course, these are not like huge decisions like, all right, what am I going to do with my life? But very small decisions, very, very tiny decision. You are not even aware of most decisions that you make because they are micro decisions. But we make thousands of decisions every day. So how do we make decisions? Well, we consider all the alternatives. We rank them from best to worst. And then, unless we have a problem, we choose the best. We choose the best alternative. And because they are mutually exclusive alternatives, then all the other options, they are gone. Okay. So what do we call the opportunity cost of a decision? This is the lost benefit of the second best alternative. So I chose the first best, Okay, the best alternative, we also call it the first best alternative. And the definition of the opportunity cost is, of course, the second best alternative also had benefits. And because I chose the first best alternative, I lose this second best alternative and the benefit associated with it. So it's just a definition. Okay, it's just a very simple definition. And your students must know what this is. Okay, let's do this exercise together to see how creative you are. I tried to find some fun examples. Discuss the opportunity cost of ordering lasagna in a restaurant, studying AS economics, traveling to Hainan during the summer holiday, and keeping large files on the full hard drive. Okay, let's start with number one. Please type your answer in the chat box. If you order lasagna in a restaurant, what could be the opportunity cost of that decision? Let's do this together. What could be the alternative? Come on. You order lasagna in a restaurant, what could be the alternative? All right. The lost benefits associated with eating a pizza. I always have that problem, right? In the restaurant, you have a menu, and well, what is the resource here? It essentially could be your money, or could be your stomach that has a limited capacity. So of course, yeah, you could choose a pizza. You could choose a steak. There are several options you have, but usually you only pick one main dish, so you lose the benefit associated with the second best dish on the menu. All right, studying AS economics, what could be the opportunity cost? What do you think? Well, that one is more straightforward, isn't it? But your students will know exactly what you mean when using this example. What else could you do instead of studying it? Oh, what else your students could do instead of studying AS economics? Well, they have a lot of options, I guess, in the school. Perhaps some of them could study business, yeah, economics, or computer science. Absolutely, that works. Or any other subject they have to choose. They cannot study 10 subjects, so they have to make a decision. How about number 3, traveling to Hainan during the summer holiday? What could be the opportunity cost of that decision? If you travel, what is the lost benefit? And I guess some of you had to make this very tough decision. All right, it could be that if your second best alternative is to get a summer job, then in this case, yes, you could say that this is the money that you could have earned if you had instead taken a job. Or this could be another travel destination. Yeah. Instead of traveling to Hainan, you could have traveled to Hangzhou, or you could have traveled to Japan, or you could have traveled to, or you could have stayed home and studied economics. Absolutely. All right, that works. So yeah, just use this exercise to try to break ice with your students, especially the ones that you do not know really well, because you might have some new students. So that's an easy question, and this could become a bit fun. So do not hesitate to spend time on this. And finally, what would be the opportunity cost of keeping large files on a full hard drive? That's a problem that I recently encountered. So you have a full hard drive with, let's say, a very large video game that takes 100 gigabytes. Well, this was not my problem, but some video games have become very, very large, right? So they can actually use a lot of space, which is the resource here. Space on a hard drive, it's a resource that you can use to produce information, that you can use to store information. So of course, in the case of keeping large files on a full hard drive, well, you could keep other files if you had more, yeah, having free space, and what you could do with the additional free space, right? What are the movies or softwares that you could store on your hard drive if you had more space? Absolutely. Okay, you can, of course, you can spend more time on this, and you can you can ask them to find more examples of situations where we make decisions and for them to identify what is the opportunity cost of each decision. The convenience of storing on the cloud, is this the alternative? Yeah, you could see it as an alternative. Okay, actually, let me just escape the full screen mode because there are some notes. Okay, it's later. Okay, and then I give 3 examples. Why 3 examples? Because it's important for your students to understand that there are essentially 3 types of economic agents who make economic decisions and who are therefore facing opportunity cost. You have individuals, consumers, well, just like us. You have businesses, and you have governments. So that's usually, we simplify, we consider that there are 3 main types of economic agents. So 3 examples, 1 for each. So what I did is that I considered each case. So we have like 1 individual, okay, Cindy. So the resource is her own labor for 2 hours. So you see that time is something, of course, that is necessary if you want to produce anything. If you have skills but no time to use your skills, you're not going to produce anything. So that's the resource. Then what I do is that I list the alternatives. Okay, 1, 2, 3, this is what you can do. Then I give the ranking between those 3 alternatives. What does she like best? What does she like least? And then I ask, all right, what is the opportunity cost? So she chooses the first best is practicing piano. So what is the opportunity cost? And just make sure that your students are able to write a full sentence to show you that they have understood what is the concept of opportunity cost when you apply it to an individual. So that's the first example. The second example is about a business that has to decide what to do with some vacant office space. And this very often happens, and perhaps in your school you have some empty classrooms or some empty offices, and your school has to decide, all right, what are we going to do with this vacant office space? So the school is going to start by listing the alternative. Are we going to create a break room, a storage room, or a print room? Then your school or the company is going to rank these alternatives from best to worst. And then eventually, all right, the print room, not room, sorry, I'm going to correct this right now, otherwise I'm going to forget. If the best option is the print room, what is the opportunity cost of that decision? All right, easy. So that's an example of opportunity cost for a business. And finally, you have an example of opportunity cost that is applied to the case of a government. So here you have a government that has to decide what to do with a natural area. So there is a national park, a beautiful forest with lakes, a lot of wildlife. What are we going to do with it? Are we going to conserve it? Are we going to engage in open cast coal mining? Okay, so essentially destroy it to extract coal. Or are we going to flood the area? You know that this has happened in some places. We flood the area to build a hydroelectric dam. Okay, so of course we destroy everything. So either we conserve it or we destroy it to produce coal or to produce electricity. This is a typical decision that must be made by a government, the federal or local governments. Same thing. So we have the alternatives. You rank them from best to worst. So the best is to conserve it. What is the opportunity cost? The loss benefit of the second best alternative, which is here to build the dam. Okay. So you see 3 simple examples. 1 for each type of economic agent. All right, now I want to escape this just to show you these author's notes. So these notes are hidden. You see, they are hidden. So if you use the PPT in class, your students will not see that. There's actually something that I really don't like in many textbooks. Whenever they want to illustrate the concept of opportunity cost, they very often use money. Right? They very often say, all right, you have $40. You can either use your $40 to go to the restaurant or to buy your book. You choose to go to the restaurant. What is the opportunity cost? Okay, and it makes sense, right? Because it's a decision. You have something that is available in a limited quantity. You can use one or the other. Both options create satisfaction. So, okay, it makes sense. And we understand the idea. But what I really don't like about those examples is that in economics, we study how to allocate resources, and the opportunity cost really is about what we should do with the resources. And what did we just say before? Money is not a resource. So I feel like it's not smart, it's not very smart to use money as an example to illustrate the concept of opportunity cost. And that's why the examples that I pick, what did I have? First one with Cindy, that was labor, her home labor, that's a resource. Second one, vacant office space, this is a resource. And the third one, a natural area, natural resource, instead of money. And to me, that's more coherent. If you tell your students, all right, money is not a resource, and then you illustrate the opportunity cost with money, well, it's a bit confusing, don't you think? All right, and I'm gonna skip this. I like this, and I'm sure your students will know what you mean, the impossible trinity, where, well, it's complicated to obtain the three things at the same time: enough sleep, good grades, and a social life. Very often, you just don't have enough time. So here the resource is time. You do not have enough time for everything. So most of us, we choose two. So then you can ask your students, all right, if you had to choose two, what would you pick? And you will have some honest students who will tell you enough sleep and social life. And those who want good grades at the next exam, they will just tell you, oh, good grades, only good grades. All right, so, okay, I think that's about it for the concept of opportunity cost. Any questions about this particular part of the PPT about opportunity cost? Are we ready to move on? Yes? Okay. So then we have set the problem. We have explained that what is the basic economic problem. So we need to find a way to solve it. And that's why I like to talk about economic systems right here. I like to talk about the different types of economic system, because this is what this is about. We have a problem, we need a solution. So we need a mechanism, we need a system that is going to try to allocate the resources between competing users. And this is what we call an economy. So to me, it makes more sense to introduce the different economic system at that point. Okay, so you start with the definition. What is an economy? It's a system which provides a solution to the basic economic problem. Okay, that's so. You can make it more explicit. We try to allocate resources between producers. So this is usually something that textbooks, they forget to mention. Of course, you have to decide what you are going to do with the resources. Okay, so that's about production, essentially. But an economy or an economic system also has to determine what we are going to do with the output. Okay, once we have produced food, cars, many services, how are we going to determine who gets those goods? This is also a function of an economic system. So this is what my definition mentions, right? So we have to allocate resources between producers and final products between consumers. Again, what is the objective? To achieve the highest possible level of satisfaction. And at that stage, you are ready to introduce the three fundamental questions: what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce. Okay, so what to produce, how to produce, this is about the allocation of resources between producers. And for whom to produce, this is the allocation of final products between consumers. You can illustrate it very simply with an everyday example. What to produce, chocolate cake or apple pie. So you determine the output mix, essentially. How to produce, this is about the production process, because there are often several ways you can combine the resources. Should I make it by myself or with my children? For whom to produce? All right, so who's going to eat the pie? Should I eat the entire pie myself, or should I share it or give some of it to my neighbor, something like that? So here, this is not about the resource, this is about the output. So any economic system, in order to provide a solution to the basic economic problem, must provide an answer to those three fundamental questions. And then you can, again, do this activity with them where you say, all right, at your home, what do you produce? What do you produce at home every day when you when you go back home? What do you and your parents produce? And at first they often say, no, nothing, we don't produce anything at home. And then soon they realize that they produce many different goods and services. Could be the meals, could be your parents or their parents providing them with a transportation service to drive them to school every day. Could be some services you produce for yourself when you clean your room, when you take a shower, when you brush your teeth. Anything like that are essentially services, mostly that you produce for yourself, or that your parents or their parents produce for their children. And you can take any particular production process or any particular good or service produced at their home and try to say, all right, so what do you produce? How do you do it? Do you produce it yourself? Do you get help from the parents, and so on? And then, all right, once the meal is prepared, who actually eats it? Something like that. And that's interesting because you can demonstrate, you can show them that these three questions really apply to any production process. Any good, you have to determine that in order to allocate resources or in order to solve the basic economic problem. Okay, so we know what an economy is, and then you can say, right, so the objective is to provide a solution to the basic economic problem. There are three questions that we must answer. And you know what? There are several different systems, with each system providing or approaching the problem in a different way, providing different answers to those three fundamental questions. And there are essentially three systems, okay? The free market economy, we also call that laissez-faire, which means essentially let do. You let do, so you do not intervene. Command economy, mixed economies, all right. And that's the purpose of what we have left to do in this PPT, to explain there are three things that your students must be able to do. How do we allocate resources in each system? So how does the system work? And then what are the pros and the cons? Okay, simple. So I'm going to go rather quickly on this because it's very straightforward. So market economy, this is, so no government intervention, supply and demand. So careful, because your students, they don't know what we call the market forces of supply and demand, right? Supply and demand is something that is taught later, chapter 2, the price system and the microeconomy. So just tell them we'll see that in more detail later. Okay, but let's just say it's in the market or the prices, or you can just say prices will allocate resources, but don't worry for now, we'll see that later in the year. It's going to make more sense when we study the price mechanism. You can list some advantages and inconvenience or limitations. So if you take different textbooks, of course, you will have very long lists of advantages, long list of limitations, and these lists, they vary from one book to the other. So I tried again to keep it simple. So I focus on the main advantages and the main limitations. So I think for each system, I think I selected 3 advantages and 2 limitations, okay? And that's enough, because if they want to write an essay or even especially an essay about that, they are not expected to make a list of 7 or 8 advantages or limitations. So in most cases, 3 or 2 is going to be definitely enough. So I mentioned the profit incentive that leads to efficiency, the variety of goods and services, and the benefits of competition in terms of price, quality, and technological change. And for the limitations, of course, I mentioned the term market failure. Please keep in mind that this is new to your students, unless they have taken IGCSE, but if they have not, they do not know what a market failure is. So that's why I gave a brief definition. And you can briefly mention the 4 main causes of market failure. But again, just tell them we will see that later. Okay, just tell them sometimes the market does not do a good job at allocating resources. And inequality. That's often something there is usually a high level of inequality. So you see 3 things. How does it work? Advantages, limitations, and we need to do that for all different economic systems. So the opposite would be a command economy. So, all right, so the resources are allocated by the government. Okay, I try to keep simple definitions again. 3 advantages, 2 limitations. And essentially, it's quite simple. You can just reverse the advantages and limitations of a market economy, and you get the advantages and limitation of a command economy. They are almost reversed, right? Low inequality, no market failure. I just added low unemployment and high job security, which is a typical feature of command economies, but that's almost the reverse of a market economy. And the limitations, okay, so absence of competition, and sometimes government intervention is costly. There is not much I should tell you guys because it's pretty easy. And finally, we have the mixed economy, which is halfway through. So how do we allocate resources? Well, some of it is going to be allocated by the market, and also the government will intervene in the economy as well. It's important that you explain to your students that there are essentially two reasons for which the government might want to intervene in the market economy. First, to correct market failures, because we said earlier that this is a problem, this is a limitation of market economies. So correcting market failure is a reason for which the government might want to intervene. And the second reason is to reduce inequalities. Income or wealth inequalities. So the first one, point one, market failures, it's about efficiency, and the second one, it's about fairness. But this is something that is going to be studied in more detail in A2 in the chapter Government Microeconomic Intervention, where we go through all the different ways in which a government can fix market failures. And we also talk about how income and wealth can be redistributed through transfer payments, taxation, negative income tax, and so on. So that's just tell them that these are the two main reasons for which a government might want to intervene. So when you think about it, the mixed economy sounds pretty good, right? Sounds like a perfect system because it benefits from it enjoys the main advantages of the market economy. Okay, a competition, product diversity, price down, quality up, blah blah blah. But it has the potential to overcome its limitations. We can fix market failures, and we can reduce income inequality. So it's a perfect system. But of course, we have to remain aware that just like in a command economy, government intervention can be costly, and it can be misguided. Okay, there can be some political interest. So yes, in theory, a mixed economy is perfect, but government intervention might not be able to restore efficiency when the market fails, and it might not be driven by let's say the government might have other objectives than just maximizing total surplus. And this is what political economy studies. Okay, and finally, and this is, I think, the last slide, your students must know what we call a transition economy. A transition economy is something quite simple where a government intervention is gradually reduced. So we sometimes say that this is when we move from a command economy to a market economy, but it's a bit extreme. I would rather say that we move away from a command economy towards a market economy. So less and less government intervention over time. How to reduce government intervention? This is not something that we should develop at that stage, because this is something we'll study in chapter 3 in AS. So you can just briefly mention the concept of privatization, deregulation, and of course, a reduction in taxes and subsidies, but just very briefly mention it. I feel like it's important to explain how we can actually achieve that. We say, right, we reduce government intervention. How do we do it? You can just give them some basic ideas on that. And the removal of price controlling quotas, of course. But there are some problems with that, which are essentially the problems of the market economy, because we move closer to a market economy. So we experience more and more of the disadvantages of a market economy. So that's why I don't really understand why this is something that is included in the syllabus and why there are so many MCQs about the main issues of transition economies, because that's essentially the same as what are the problems of a market economy. Yes, we'll have rising inequalities, because yes, inequalities are a typical feature of market economies. we will have a greater exposure to market failures. If there is less and less government intervention, well, you will have more and more problems with public goods, externalities, merit and demerit goods, and so on, market powers. There is likely to be more unemployment. Why? Because in the market economy, there is more competition, because there is no more government support. So that might be a problem, high unemployment during that process of this transitioning process. There could be some problems with your balance of payments, but I don't really think it's a good idea to talk about that at that stage, because the students, they don't really know what we call a trade deficit. They might have some very basic knowledge of what we call import and export. Basically, what you can tell them is, yeah, we might have a problem because we might not be very competitive, because we move away from a command economy where production was a bit inefficient. So when we open up the economy to the rest of the world, then we might realize that, hey, we are very inefficient at producing goods and services from abroad. They are much cheaper and the quality is much better. So then the consequence is that you can have everyone in your country buying products from abroad rather than buying your domestic products. And obviously this is a problem. So you can just try to give them the intuition without using the keywords trade deficit, balance of payments, things like that. Otherwise, it's going to be a bit tricky. And yeah, there might be lack of entrepreneurship skills. Not enough entrepreneurs, simply because this did not used to be the culture in this country, in sufficiently developed financial markets. So those new businesses, they might be unable to access the funds they need to grow, could be a problem. And there might be some inflation or higher inflation if you initially had some price ceilings to keep prices down, especially for basic foodstuffs. For example, the price of bread, the price of eggs, the price of milk, things like that. Perhaps the government used to set price ceilings to make sure that everybody could purchase those basic commodities. But as government intervention is reduced, then those price ceilings are removed, and this can lead to higher inflation. So you see, again, I try to keep it simple. I don't like a very, very long list where you have like 5 or 10 different limit of problems. I try to keep the main ones, the ones that are the easiest to understand, the ones that are the most likely to make sense to your students. And yes, that's it for this first topic. Good. Any questions? Please let me know. Please type any remark, any question that you may have. And in the meantime, I will give you some time to type your questions and remarks. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the various documents. So now I'm going to share my screen. Let me show you the various documents that you can find on the website. All right, so first, here's a summary. So how many slides did we have? We had 24 slides in the teacher's version. And the summary only has 2 pages. And everything is there, right? In blue, you have the definition. So you have the key ideas. You have this table with the 3 main types of economic systems, how it works, pros, cons. I try to keep it simple, transition economy, how to reduce government intervention, typical issues. So that's a pretty quick way to review, right? For your students, I'm sure they're gonna be very happy to have this document available. Then we have a list of definitions. All the definitions about this topic, they are right here, okay? You can also find them on the website, econdoctor.com. You go there, lexicon. So I'm still working on it. You type, for example, a resource, anything. And did it work? Oops. Sorry, my computer. Okay, resource, and you have all the definitions there. As I explained yesterday, by the end of the academic year, there will be all the keywords for AS and A2 that will be on the website with simple definitions. To me, it's very important that you give simple definitions to the students so they can remember them easily. and they can use these definitions in the data response and in the essays, okay? So instead of using complicated definitions, try to keep it as simple as possible. Otherwise, they will forget these definitions. They will not be able to use them properly, okay? And I will also, as I explained yesterday, I will also create some games, some online games, so the students can practice just review definitions and make sure that they have a clear understanding of all of the key concepts. But it's going to take a few months for me to create those games. Then we have the concept cards. So that's what I told you about at the beginning of today's workshop, where you can just, cut all those concept cards. And then what I do is that I put them on my desk. And of course, I flip them so the students cannot really see what's on each of them. So they pick one concept card randomly, and then they have to explain to the class what this is. Okay, so if I pick opportunity cost, I must give the definition of what the opportunity cost is about, and I must give 3 examples or 3 decisions that involve an opportunity cost. So it could be a definition, could be an example, could be, okay, so for economic systems, how it works, what are the pros and the cons, and then I introduce some drawing challenges, just like to make it a bit more fun, to make this game a bit more engaging. So here the drawing challenge, a sheep and a turtle. So if the student picks that, he or she has to draw a sheep or a turtle on the whiteboard. Again, just to keep your lesson a bit more fun, a bit more engaging. Very, very useful to review at the end of each topic. Then what do we have? Then these are the essay questions that relate to this particular topic. So this document is for scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost. Second one about factors of production, and third one about economic systems. So again, as I explained yesterday, I did not create these documents. These documents have been put together by a fellow economics teacher who still works in China, I think, Mr. Kanan Narayana Sami. So all credit goes to him. I feel like this was very useful. So when you want to assign homework, then you do not have to go through all past papers. You can simply go navigate by topic, so extremely useful. And the students, when they review for an examination, and if they want to review a particular topic, they can go through all the questions that have been asked about this particular topic to make sure that they are confident answering all of them. Okay. Also, you can download, and you can tell your students that these PPTs, they can be downloaded from the website just by clicking on resources, selecting AS Economics. They can select chapter 1 if they want, and then they will be able to access the PPT here. So teacher version, student version. So if you want to print the document for them, then feel free to do it. If you want just to give them the electronic version, it might be a good idea. And as I mentioned, you have the teacher version and the student version. So for the first one, I think the difference is not very significant because there are no diagrams, but it's likely to be a bit shorter. Let's just check. So we had 24 slides for the teacher version, and well, only 22 here. So you see the difference is not very significant. But for other PPTs, the difference can be much, much bigger. So then you can print things right away. And actually, if you open the PDF rather than the PPT, if you open the PDF, then you already have 2 slides per page. So you can just print this document right away. Okay, it's not necessary to print 1 slide per page. So here we have 2 per page. Okay, and last thing, and then I can move on to the second topic. Make sure that you use the Joker website if you want to assign some homework. So let's just show it to you very quickly. Let's say you want your students to review this particular topic. So let's say, all right, I want you to review chapter 1. So this is for AS Economics. I give you 45 minutes. The deadline is going to be sometime next week. Boom. Then you select the students. Okay, let's just say 1 lucky student. You can select by paper, by topic, but of course, if I want to review this, I want, okay, let's say I want to review that. Scarcity, opportunity cost. We have 30 MCQs. You click on next, and then you will be able to review, to preview the MCQs that are about this particular topic. You can select which ones you want to include in the assignment, in the homework. Sorry, it's a bit slow because we are having this meeting at the same time. Okay, so let's just say I want to select just one. Keep it simple. You click on next. You will be able to select a few options. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, 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 okay. And then your assignment is created. And when your students will log into the website, they will be able to complete the assignment, and you will see their grades as soon as they have finished. Okay. So very useful. I know many of you use the website, and if you do not use this website yet, I strongly advise you to create an account, to add your students on the website, for them to practice, and you can even do online tests and everything. Okay, now let me have a look at the questions that you typed. Just have a look at what you said. All right, how many lessons would you take to cover this content? It's not very long, but it's the beginning of the year, so you should not move too fast. Let me think about it. So for needs and wants, resources, factors of production, up to the basic economic problem, and perhaps even opportunity cost, I'm pretty confident you can cover that in pretty much one lesson, right? There is not much. Maybe up to the basic economic problem. If you go slowly, then you can have a second lesson on opportunity cost and the different economic systems. Well, I think 2 lessons should be enough to cover the content. And then you can spend some additional time if you want to review with them. But yeah, so to go through the content, I would say that 2 lessons, 1 lesson is, well, I mean, 45 minutes, 40 or 45 minutes. That should be enough to cover this content at a reasonable pace. It seems that transition economy is not mentioned on the syllabus. Well, actually, I came across a message on the Cambridge discussion board. Let me try to show it to you. I don't know if you use that. If you don't, please create an account. I don't know if I will be able to access it without the VPN. But this question was asked on the Cambridge discussion board. And it's too slow. And I think Mr. Terry Cook, which is, I believe, the chief examiner or something like that, indicated that transition economies should be taught to the students. So even if it's not specifically in the syllabus, we can check, actually. Let's check the syllabus. Economic systems. Yes, you're right. It's not specifically in the syllabus. But still, and there are many MCQs that relate to transition economies. And even if they do not specifically mention the term transition economy, they very often say an economy is moving from command to market or something like that. So even if this keyword of transition economy is not explicit, knowledge about what happens when economies move from one system to the other is definitely relevant for the examination. So you should really teach this content to your students. All right, next question. Okay, how can we access lecture recording? You mean the recordings of today's workshop? Well, it's quite simple. So for now, of course, it's not yet available. But what you will be able to do as soon as the workshop is over, again, let me share my screen. You go to, okay, Econ Mentor. So you click on resources, and I can show you for efficiency, for example. So as soon as the workshop is over, I will upload the video. So then you will be able to watch it. Okay. So for this one, it's not there yet, simply because the workshop is not yet over. What else? Okay, I'm a new teacher. I'm wondering how much time you take to cover the all AS content. Oh, Well, I'm usually quite slow because I like to explain things like in detail. So usually I finish the entire syllabus, let's say the first or second week of April. So then we have at least one full month to review. But the advantage is that because I go slowly and I schedule a lot of tests, unit tests, and so on, most of the reviewing phase, or most of the reviewing work is already done when we are finished with when we are done with the syllabus. But yeah, usually I know some teachers, they go through the syllabus very, very fast. They finish pretty much everything in December or January, and then they have 4 months to review. Okay, if this works for you, if this works for your students, why not? I just don't feel comfortable with this, with rushing like that. I don't feel like I'm doing my job properly if I skip things, if I skip too many things, or if I just focus on the key ideas. To me, it's not just the exam. I really want to teach them the ideas. That I want them to build up like a deep understanding of economics, and it takes time. So yeah, usually going through the content. But of course, I go through the content, but at the end of each PPT, I stop to review. I do some MCQs, I assign some MCQs, I assign some essay questions as homework. I also ask them to prepare mind maps. So it's not like if it was only content until April and then only reviewing. And I think this is what everyone should do, okay? To as soon as you finish something, you make sure that they have understood that you need this information. If you realize that, all right, they have understood, you can move on. And if you feel like many of them are still making serious mistakes, then you should spend more time explaining the content again. All right. Good. We are ready to go through the second document. And it's going to be a bit quicker because I do not need to introduce all the other documents. Let me just share my screen again. But because the documents available on the website are the same, which are, so what do you have? You have, so this is all these documents. You have the concept cards, you have the teacher version of the slides, student version of the slides, definitions, the essay questions. Okay, so you have all that. You have all that again, and for each workshop, you will have all these different documents that you can use to prepare your students as well as possible. And of course, all the documents are available on econdoctor.com. You can use the MCQ website. You can use the online dictionary. Okay, so the only thing that we have to do together now is simply to look at the second PPT on some key economic ideas. All right, let's do that. Some key economic ideas. Okay. So I usually start with positive and normative statements, not much to say. Positive, they are based on empirical evidence. They describe facts and are therefore objective. Try to use examples from, like the examples you give don't have to be examples about economics. Try to use examples that make sense to everyone. Okay, Michael plays basketball twice a week. The storming of the Bastille took place on July 4th, 1789. The weather will be hot tomorrow. All right. I chose these 3 examples because one is present. The first one is present. The second one is past, and the third one is future. Okay, so a positive statement can be about something that happened, something that is currently happening, or something that will happen. And something else, and I use the second one specifically, is interesting. I don't know how good your history is, but the storming of the Bastille took place on July 14th, okay, not July 4th, 1789, because a positive statement can be false. Positive sometimes misleads the students because they feel like, oh, if it's positive, this means it's true. No. A positive statement can be false, and this is the example. This is the second example. Okay, the second example is a positive statement. It describes facts. It is objective, but it is a false statement. So be careful with that. On the other hand, normative, okay, based on beliefs, they express opinions or value judgments, and they are therefore subjective. Okay, and you see that these two definitions, they they follow the same format. Okay, they are based on they express or describe and they are therefore to me, that makes it easier to remember the definitions. And again, you don't have to use examples from economics. So Eva should not watch this movie. Of course, it's an opinion. The government should raise the minimum wage. Again, it's an opinion. Hot pot is too spicy. Again, this is an opinion. And I like this third example because sometimes students, in order to determine if a statement is positive or normative, they only look at, oh, is there should in the sentence? And if they see should, oh yeah, it's normative. And if they do not see should, oh, it's positive. You see the third sentence, hot pot is too spicy. There is no should in the sentence, but still it is the normative statement. Okay. Then what you can do is to give them a list of statements, and you can simply ask them to tell if it's normative or positive. And these ones are statements that are about economics. So first one, I don't really remember. First one is positive. Second one is normative. Third one is positive. Fourth one is positive. Fifth one is normative. And last one is also normative. Okay. Right. So you can add as many statements as you want. I just selected 6 of them. Then once we are done with, that's all, right? Really about positive and normative statements, that's all they must know. It's quite simple. Then you can introduce the concept of marginal analysis, which is something that might be a bit tricky at the beginning. What does it mean to make a decision at the margin? So here's a definition. Economic agents, they make marginal decisions or decisions at the margin by considering the effect of small changes from an existing situation. Okay, so you are somewhere at a given situation and you essentially ask yourself, should I do a little bit more something or should I do a little bit less of something? Okay, you have to decide or to choose the value of an economic variable. It could be a level of production, a level of consumption, a level of taxation. For example, you have already eaten, let's say, 2 chocolate bars, or a business has already produced 100 cars, or the government has set a VAT rate at 20%. So this is where we stand. This is what we call the margin, where we stand. And a marginal decision would be, all right, now what do I do? Do I do a little bit more? Do I do a little bit less? So for example, the government could say, should I raise the VAT rate to 21%? Should I decrease it to 19%? The firm could say, all right, should I produce 1 less car, 1 more car? And the consumer should say, all right, tomorrow, should I consume 1 more chocolate bar or 1 less chocolate bar? Okay, this is essentially marginal decision. And how do we make this decision? We simply compare the benefit of doing, of slightly changing the value of the economic variable and the cost associated with a small change in the economic variable. And of course, we will make sure that we make the best possible decision to achieve maximum satisfaction. So same thing, try to use examples from, could be economic examples, but could be something about your daily life, right? Should I produce another car if you're a business? Should I eat a little less junk food? Should I watch another episode of that series? I'm sure if you have a Netflix account or if you like watching TV shows, you probably ask yourself this type of question. You know, it's late, it's already midnight, it's already 1 in the morning, and the last episode is just finished, and say, should I go to bed or should I watch just 1 additional episode? This is marginal analysis. You compare the marginal cost and the marginal benefit. If you run around if you are on a running track, on a racing track, and you say, all right, I have already run 20 laps, should I run another lap or not? This is a marginal decision. If you have already spent 10 hours preparing a lesson, should you spend an 11th hour preparing your lesson? Same thing, the marginal benefit would be your lesson might be a bit better prepared, but the marginal cost is, of course, whatever else you could have done during this additional hour. So, and same thing, you can ask them, okay, I have given you 5 examples. Try to give me more. Try to give me more examples that illustrate marginal analysis. Should I give a little bit more homework to my students? So same thing. What would be the marginal benefit? Well, if I give a little bit more homework, then they will be better prepared for the exam. But the marginal cost for me will be more marking. So when we decide how much homework we give to our students, we use marginal analysis. We balance the marginal cost and the marginal benefit. How about this? I actually took this example from an AP textbook. So I don't know if some of you teach AP economics, but I liked this example. So I stole it from the book. Sorry, I didn't include the reference. So we have data about the marginal benefit of watching the same movie. So, you watch the movie for the first time, second time, third time. You have the marginal benefit and you have the marginal cost. And the question is simple: how many times should you watch the movie? So then you can illustrate the marginal analysis with figures. You can say, all right, should I watch the movie the first time? Yes, marginal benefit is greater than marginal cost. So if I watch the movie the first time, it creates a net gain. Should I watch the movie the second time? So still the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. So yeah, I should watch the movie a second time. Should I watch the movie a third time? No, because the marginal benefit is less than the marginal cost. Okay, so even though overall, if you watch the movie 3 times, even though overall the total benefit, 36 is greater than the total cost, 24, you should only watch the movie twice, not 3 times. Okay, pretty easy. Then we can talk about time periods. Time periods. So the problem with time periods is that the concept of time periods varies depending on where you are. And this, I'm going to say a few things about that. But for now, we can focus on production theory. Okay, to distinguish the very short run, the long run, and the very long run in production theory. And as you know, it's essentially we mostly focus on the short run and on the long run in AS&A2. And as you know, it's about flexibility, about the firm's flexibility. If you are in a very short run, or if you consider a short period of time, then the firm is not going to be very flexible. But if you consider a longer period of time, then the firm will have the ability to change more things. That's essentially the idea. So, which means that in the short run, or if you consider a short period of times, some things will be fixed. Okay, they will not change. But if you increase the duration of this time period, then what was fixed in the short run becomes a variable. You can change it in the long run. You have more flexibility in the long run. And they are essentially in production theory. If you choose a given time period, it's going to give you information about 2 things. It's going to tell you whether or not firms can change the quantity of a factor of production that they use. Okay, can I change the number of workers that I have? Can I change the number of machines that I have? That's essentially the first thing. But it also gives information about the business environment. Do firms operate in a business environment that is fixed, or do they operate in a business environment that can change? And this is why we have this concept of the very long run, because in the very long run, we will assume that the business environment can change. So the state of technology, government policy, social customs, they may change in the very long run. But yeah, we mostly focus on factors of production. Can we change the quantity we have, yes or no? So then you can define the very short run, the long run, and the very long run. So the very short run, everything is fixed. Okay, so the quantity of FOPs that we have, we cannot change these quantities. And the business environment is fixed. Easy. So everything is fixed. You cannot change anything. In the short run, there are some factors of production for which you can change the quantity, but there is at least one FOP that is available in fixed quantity. Okay, so yeah, some are variable, but at least one is fixed. And the business environment is fixed in the short run. And you know that usually, to simplify, we only consider 2 factors of production, capital and labor. And the typical assumption that we make is that Labor is the variable factor in the short run, so we can change the quantity of labor in the short run. However, capital is a fixed factor, so we have a certain quantity of machines or a building of a given size, and we cannot change that in the short run. In the long run, however, we can change the quantity of all factors of production. So all FOPs are variable. However, the business environment is still fixed. Okay, so the state of technology is still fixed, the government policy is still fixed, social customs are still taken as unchanged, okay, fixed. So again, if we only consider two factors of production in the long run, then we will say that both labor and capital are variable. You can change the quantity of both. And finally, the very long run, so everything can change. So you can change, the firm can change the quantity of all factors of production, and the business environment as well is variable. So there might be a change in the state of technology, a change in government policy, or a change in social customs. Okay. How long is the short run? We don't know. Okay, you can't say something like, oh, the short run, it's less than 2 months or less than a year or less than a week. It depends. It depends on the industry, because as we mentioned, it depends on how easy it is for businesses to change the quantity of the factors of production that they have. And this depends on the industry, right? There are some businesses that for which it's easier to change the quantity of resources very quickly, but there are other industries in which it's going to take way more time to be able to change the quantity of all factors of production. So you should not tell your students, all right, the short run is a certain number of days, weeks, months, or years, because it really depends on the industry that you consider. And just summarize it, okay? You can have this table. In the student version, it's empty, okay? So you can just ask them to fill this information. So the quantity of labor, the quantity of capital, and the business environment. And you can just say if it's fixed or variable. And I have highlighted these two columns because, yes, we mostly focus in AS and A2 on the short run and the long run. Right, and that's about it for time periods. Let me just stop for 1 minute. Do you guys have any questions? Let's summarize what we've done so far. Do you have any questions about positive or versus normative statements, about marginal analysis, and about time periods? Is there anything that you would like to ask before we move on and before we talk about economic models? Oh, if you have no question, it's good if you type go or something like that, okay? Because otherwise I don't really know if you guys are typing a question, a long question, or if you are just waiting for me to move on. So if you don't have questions, just type go or something like that, so then I know that we are ready to move on. And I am out of water. Oh. Scarcity. Okay, so economic models. Yeah, that's also something that, well, your students do not need to have a very detailed understanding of what is an economic model, but still, it's worth saying a few things about that to define it. So what we call an economic model is just a simplified version of reality. What's the main benefit of economic models is that it helps gain insight into economic phenomena, because reality is too complicated. And if we if we try to analyze reality in all of its complexity, we will not be able to conclude anything. It's going to be too difficult to analyze. So instead we simplify and we work with this simplified version of reality. That's it. So what do? We make simplifying assumptions. It could be about the characteristics of economic agents, the feature of the economic environment, the relationship between economic variables. So we make these assumptions to create this model and to make things easier. Of course, the model should be simple enough, otherwise we'll not be able to understand it, but it has to be complex enough so we can actually use it to to reach some interesting conclusions. If your model is too simple, then there is nothing that you are going to, well, it's going to be difficult to gain insight into economic phenomena if you have a model that is too simple. So it's all about balance. you should actually talk about these types of variables to your students because it's going to help understand the concept of ceteris paribus. In a model, you have two types of variables. Ones that we call exogenous, which are, well, variables that whose value is determined outside of the model. Okay, so they are not explained by the model. Sometimes we call that parameters. And there are endogenous variables, which are variables whose value is predicted or determined by the model. Okay. And it's quite important to understand the difference between these exogenous and endogenous variables. Of course, a model, you can describe it using words, diagrams, or mathematical expressions. You can make simulations or predictions. Okay, this is not very, very useful, so I'm going to move fast on this. And actually, I like to show that to the students. Can you guess which city this is? Is anyone good at geography? Which city is this? And if you know me, then you can probably guess what city I picked. Look at that. No, nobody knows which city? That's Paris. That's a picture of Paris. This is reality. Okay, it's complex. It's very complex. A good example of a model is just a map. Okay, this is exactly the same. This is exactly the same view. Okay, the same location, but you see that, oh, this is a simplified version of reality. Oh, and that's much easier to work with this than with this. Too complex, too many houses, buildings, streets, blah, blah, blah. This is a simplified version of reality that helps gain insight. So here it's not about economic phenomena. Here it's about geography. So a map is a model. A map is a model of reality. Okay, I'm gonna skip that. You can have a look at it with your students. This practice time are useful to just convince your students that they have to be careful with their intuition. And the first one is meant to well, convince them that using equations can be useful. And the second one is meant to convince them that using diagrams can be useful. Okay, if you want to skip it, it's fine. Okay, it's not extremely useful, but I feel like it might be interesting because we use a lot of diagrams, a lot of equations in economics, and they might not understand why. So these two exercises are meant to show them that if they don't use equations and they don't use diagrams, they are likely to be wrong and they are likely to be misguided by their intuition. So you feel free to have a look at these two exercises, and if you like them, if you feel them relevant, well, spend some time working on these exercises with your students. Okay, now very important assumption that we use often in economics is the ceteris paribus assumption. And I usually start with a question. You are sick, so you take medication and you feel better the next day. Can you conclude that the medication was effective? Can you guys tell me? What would you answer to that? You are sick, so you take medication and you feel better the next day. Can you conclude that the medication was effective? Yes or no? Simple. Can you conclude that the medication is effective? If you are sick, you take the medication and you feel better. Do you hesitate? Yes or no? Maybe? You sound like a student. Maybe, yeah. Well, actually, you cannot conclude that the medication was effective. Maybe it was. Maybe it was. But maybe it's just your immune system that, healed your body. And even if you had not taken the medication, you would have felt better. The problem that we have here is that, well, there are two things that are contributing to make you feel better. There is perhaps there is a medication, but there's also your immune system and your own body that is working to make you feel better. So because you have two things happening at the same time, you can't conclude which one is responsible for your better health. And that's a problem, because then we cannot really establish a cause and effect relationship. We cannot conclude that the medication was effective because there were two things working at the same time. Okay, that's a good introduction to the ceteris paribus concept. First, you can give the translation. It means all else equal. Sometimes we say all other things being equal. I find this too complicated. All else equal is easier. And it really is about cause and effect relationship. Okay, when you try to connect causes and consequences. And the example that I give here is that if you increase the price of a product, the cause, well, we know because of the law of demand that this usually decreases the quantity demanded. That's the consequence of the effect, and vice versa. Okay, so in that case, no problem. But in practice, okay, the price of a product might change, but at the same time, you will have other things changing, other economic variables changing at the same time. So if you have several things changing at the same time, let's say the price of the good, the income, the price of the other good, the preference of consumer, and you see that the quantity demanded changes, how do you know if the change in quantity demanded is caused by the price of the good, the price of other goods, the change of income? You can't, okay, because there are several factors changing at the same time. And that's a problem because, again, you cannot study or you cannot establish any cause and effect relationship. The example that I gave is if you look at coffee and you see that the quantity demanded of coffee decreases when the price rises and when the price of tea decreases. So you see the problem we have. There are two changes at the same time, the change in the price of coffee and the change in the price of tea. Then you don't know what caused the change in the quantity demanded of coffee. That's a problem. So what we do to overcome this problem in economic models, we make an assumption, which is a very strong assumption, actually quite unrealistic, but we assume that we only have one exogenous variable changing, one variable that changes, and everything else remains the same. Okay, so you change the price of coffee and everything else, the price of tea, the income of consumers, the preference of consumers, everything else remains unchanged, is held constant. So then if you see that the price of, if you see that the quantity demanded of coffee changes, then you know for sure that it has been caused by the change in the price of coffee and not something else. So you can actually establish a cause and effect relationship. You can actually relate the two variables, the two economic variables in a logical way. That's the purpose of the ceteris paribus assumption. We call that comparative statics, but this is not very important. Okay, well, we are almost done. There are only two things we have to do. We need to talk about economic structure. It's going to just take a few minutes, and then we need to talk about specialization and division of labor. It's going to be rather quick too, and we are done. So economic structure, there are two things you can do. So yes, this is how we can divide the economy into different sectors. So of course, first you can distinguish the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. You should give a definition of each of them, and you should give examples. Okay, so primary is about exploiting natural resources. Secondary, it's about manufacturing, construction. Tertiary is about services. If you want, you don't have to, but in most textbooks, in most sources, they also include the quaternary sector, which is information-based and knowledge-oriented products and services. But for ASNA2, it's okay if you focus on the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary sectors. So give the definition and give examples. And then you can also distinguish between the public sector and the private sector. All right, this is something that we have not yet studied. So public, everything controlled by the government. Private, everything owned, managed, and controlled by individuals and private companies. And then what you should do is actually to relate these public versus private sector to the different types of economic systems. You can say, yeah, in a market economy, there is no public sector, only private. In a command economy, no private sector, only public. In a mixed economy, both sectors coexist. They exist together. And in a transition economy, the public sector gradually shrinks, becomes smaller and smaller, and the private sector gradually expands. Okay, so as soon as you have defined public sector versus private sector, make sure that you connect to the different types of economic systems. And finally, the last key economic ideas, and you see that this PPT is essentially a list of important ideas that we use very often in economics, is the concept of specialization and the division of labor. So what's a bit tricky about specialization is that you know that it is very closely connected to the theory of a comparative advantage, but comparative advantage is something that we study much later in the year. So you should try to keep it simple. Okay, do not talk about comparative advantage and the production possibility curve. I feel like this is too early. So start with the definition of specialization. We specialize at what we are good at. Emphasize that specialization can be for individuals, can be for countries, can be for businesses as well. The opposite of specialization would be self-sufficiency for individuals or countries where we produce everything. That's the opposite of specialization. For a firm, the opposite of specialization would be diversification. You know, there are a lot of keywords. You can slowly introduce these keywords to your students. But then you can say, all right, we could try to produce absolutely everything we need. The opposite of specialization, but first we may not have enough resources to do that. Okay, think about a country that doesn't have oil. How do they produce things that require oil? Complicated, right? And even if we had all the resources that we needed, we might be very bad at producing them, very inefficient relative to other economic agents to produce certain goods and services. So that's why specialization is very attractive, very appealing. And what you should emphasize is that specialization requires trade. You will never specialize in a particular occupation, or a country will never specialize in a particular industry, for example, if it could not trade. If you cannot trade with other individuals, if your country could not trade with other countries, because of course you need to obtain the goods and services that you do not produce yourself. So trade and specialization, they go hand in hand. If you do not have a good mechanism to trade, to obtain what you have not produced yourself, then there will not be any form of specialization. Then you can briefly mention how we can trade. You can briefly mention the concept of a barter economy, where you can swap one good with another. Okay, so I'll give an example. I give you 2 rabbits in exchange for 12 pairs. Okay, this is one way we can specialize and trade, no problem. But you know that the barter economy is a very inefficient system that has severe limitations. It's much better to use money. Again, there is a topic about money, so do not just mention it. No need to give a detailed information about the characteristics, the functions of money, and so on. And you can give an example of how you can specialize and use money to actually trade and obtain what you have not produced yourself. Briefly mention the main benefits of specialization: a greater productivity, more products available, and at the end of the day, a higher quality of life or higher living standard. But then you should also mention the limitations, the problems that we encounter with specialization. The same thing for the limitations. What I do is that I look at the limitations for individuals, the limitations for businesses, and the limitations for countries. So for individuals, when they specialize, they become less flexible. They might become de-skilled, so they have less or lower occupational mobility, so they are more likely to become structurally unemployed. Again, these are keywords that we will study a bit later, but it's a good idea to introduce them, mention briefly what this is about. So then when we will study them in more detail in the future, your students might remember what this is about. So this is for individuals. For businesses, of course, if you specialize, so you do not diversify, then you are more exposed to business risk. You know that diversification is one way to reduce your exposure to the business risk. And for countries, they become more foreign dependent when they specialize. All right. So if they import products from other countries. So if they export some of their production, of course, they become more vulnerable to what happens in the rest of the world, especially if they import key resources or key goods like food, energy, or medication. Okay, we will talk about that more when we study protectionism, which is one of the last topic of the syllabus. Okay, so once we are done with specialization, we can say a few additional things about the division of labor, the process of breaking up a task into smaller interconnected subtasks. That's how we can define it. And please emphasize that if you want your workers, if you are a business and if you want your workers to specialize, well, first you need to implement the division of labor. You can see that as a different stage. First, you divide your overall production process into many subtasks or individual tasks, and then you can assign one worker to each task. Okay, so you could say that the division of labor is a prerequisite if you want your workers to specialize. Some examples. Sorry for the quality, but this is the best quality that I could find. So this is the most famous example. This is Adam Smith pin factory. You probably know the example. So just to say that, hey, look on this picture, we see very clearly that there are different workers and each of them is completing one particular task. Okay, one independent task. So of course it's not independent, it's connected, yes, but each of them focuses on completing one task. This is Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, where we have two workers here. Where each of them has a specific task. You can actually show part of the movie if you have some time, if you want to entertain your students. That's a very funny movie, and there is a lot of economic content that you can discuss in this movie, Modern Times. And then something more recent. This is an iPhone factory in China that was actually closed, I think 2 years ago. Pegatron, which was near Shanghai, I think. So this is an iPhone factory. We don't really see what they do precisely, but we can assume that they are completing different tasks. At least there is like the supervisor that is definitely completing something different. But yeah, I assume that they are not doing the same thing. That's an assumption. Okay, and finally, what's good about the division of labor? What's bad about the division of labor? So yeah, greater labor productivity and lower production costs. You can talk about the learning by doing process, lower training costs, good for consumers because the greater productivity can lead to lower prices, and it may improve product quality because the workers are very highly skilled because they repeat tasks, the same task over and over, and they become very skilled at completing a task. So we could expect product quality to improve, but this may not always be true. Again, keep it simple for the advantages, and same thing for the limitations. Keep it simple. Clearly, this creates a dependency on the other workers. This can create bottlenecks. So yeah, everything becomes connected. So if there is one problem in the production process, once a tiny problem, the entire system might collapse. And the biggest limitation that is often associated with the division of labor is the problem of frustration, boredom, alienation, because excessive division of labor makes it very tedious, monotonous, dehumanizing. So this leads to a poor worker motivation. They might lose some of their productivity. They might be unhappy and leave the company. So the company might have pretty high HR expenses to replace these workers. And if they are very poorly motivated, they might just do a bad job. And this can result in a low product quality. And as we mentioned before, when workers, they over-specialize, they might lose some of their skills. They become occupationally immobile, and they are more exposed to the risk of structural unemployment. So you see, I just focused on the three main limitations associated with the division of labor. And that's it. Same thing as I said before, you have access to all these, all the documents. So you have a summary, you have a list of definitions, You have the essay questions that are related to this particular topics, those key economic ideas. Did I forget anything? And you have the concept cards if you want to review with the students. And you can also use the EconJoker platform if you wish to assign homework or simply invite your students to practice MCQs associated with this particular topic. Okay, and I am done. So now we have some time left for any question that you may have. So you can either type your questions in the chat box or remark or questions, anything, or you can unmute your mic and directly talk to me. Might be quicker. I am listening to you and I am reading your messages. Please go ahead. We have some time left. Okay, just a sec. I'll be back because I am out of, oh no, okay, I have my charger. I was a bit out of battery. Okay, no questions? No questions at all? No remarks? Okay, so let me ask you one question. Do you feel confident about teaching this content now? Do you feel like you have enough documents, that you have a good enough understanding of this part of the syllabus? Again, what to me, what makes it difficult is that I found the textbooks and even the syllabus a bit disorganized. Everything is organized in a way that at least didn't make sense to me. So I spent some time to try to reorganize everything in a way that is more logical, at least to me, and in a way that should make more sense to your students. So I hope you feel the same. And I hope that this workshop tonight has given you all the tools that you need for you to be able to walk into your classroom confidently and like deliver this content as well as possible for your students. But what if your students have already taken IGCSE? Because I don't know how this works in your school, but in my case, most of my students have already taken IGCSE. So in that case, it's always difficult to find the right pace, because if you go too slowly, many of them are going to be bored, because that's very basic. And if they have worked well in IGCSE, they would say, yeah, I know. But if you go too fast, then they might feel like they get it, but they might miss some important details. And we are building foundations here. That's why this is so important. Like, these first topics are so important, because this is really where we try to lay the foundations of the entire A-level course. So even if your students have taken IGCSE, you can adapt your lessons, of course, to try to make it more engaging, to make sure that they are not excessively bored on your first week of lessons. But still, you should take enough time just to make sure that they have strong enough foundations. Yes, I teach it in this order. I do not follow the textbook. I actually don't have a textbook, because you know that there was a new law passed in China last year that forbids international textbooks. Do you know that? Is this the same in your school? Probably, right? Unless you are let's say a real international school with international students. But if you are an international school with Chinese students, international books are no longer allowed. And therefore, we are not supposed to use this material. So yeah, I'd rather follow this this order. I think there's one book, it actually gets pretty close. Let me share my screen. It is pretty close. My order is pretty similar to, where is it, main textbooks, to this one, like the Peter Smith. Peter Smith does something pretty similar. It's not exactly the same, but if you look at part one, so it starts with introducing economics. So it you know, pretty much same thing. So economic problem, opportunity cost, scarcity, coordination problem. Then it's a bit different because it starts introducing decision at the margin. But then, if I remember well, where was it? Yeah, you see, 1.3, some key economic ideas. So it's not exactly the same because some content is that I include in this part, the book doesn't include it. So here's just specialization, markets, microeconomics and macroeconomics, money and exchange. So it's a bit different, but I liked the idea of having one part where we make like this type of a list of the important economic ideas. So I drew inspiration from that. So I'd rather follow this. And then what I do, I can show you my my PPTs. What do I do next? So we are there. So we have the basic economic problem and economic systems, some key economic ideas. Then I go through the production possibility curve, money, and the classification of goods and services. And then we have everything. The entire chapter is covered. So yeah, just makes more sense to me. I suggest you use the same order unless you feel more comfortable organizing your content in a different way. It's entirely up to you. I spent 3 terms in finishing the IG syllabus and 2 months for revision. It worked quite well. Okay. Yes, well, 2 months for revision is definitely enough, especially because you have 2 months before paper 2, right? Before the second IG paper, but then you have more time for MCQs. So you probably have even more for revisions. Yeah. So yes, I feel like the way I have organized the content is probably easier for students and even for you to teach, because you know everything is at least, especially the first part, basic economic problem and economic system, everything is connected. It's like a story. You should really see your work as a teacher, as a storyteller. And if you want your students to remember your story, well, you need to make sure that the different chapters of your story are connected. Of course, the second PPT on some key economic ideas, it's a bit different because they are some ideas are independent. We've talked about many different things, but at least there are many different things that I put together in the same PPT, and I keep them together. There is a mix of IGCSE Econ students. Some of them have studied IGCSE Econ, the rest have not. I encourage the former to be a student tutor and assist. Okay, so if this works with your students, that's great. In my case, I will probably have the same situation where I will have almost 50% of my students who have already taken IGCSE, and the rest who has not. And I might try something, at least for the first chapter. I might actually divide my class in 2 groups. One group of students who have already taken IGCSE and one group who has not. And then instead of just going through the PPT with the entire class, I might actually like do different things with the 2 different groups. It might be a bit challenging, but I want to give it a try. I want to give it a shot. I have never really tried that before. But I want to be able to move at different pace, at least at the beginning, for the very basic concepts. Otherwise, my previous IG students are likely to be really bored. So I might give it a shot. But I like the idea of having more experienced students assisting those who have no prior knowledge of economics. Okay, any other remark, any other questions before we finish tonight's workshop? So as I mentioned earlier, as soon as this workshop finishes, I will I will export the video recording. It takes some time, but usually around 11 p.m. tonight, you should have access to the video recording on the website. Let me also remind you that next week we will have again two workshops, one for AS, one for A2. The A2 workshop will take place on Tuesday. We'll talk about the cost benefit analysis and market failures. And the AS workshop will be, well, essentially we will go through the rest of the chapter. So there are three things we need to talk about. We need to talk about the PPC, money, and the classification of goods and services. So there will be a lot on our plate. So same thing, I will upload the documents as soon as possible. If you have not yet registered for next week's workshops, feel free to, feel free to do it on the website. Okay, and if there are no further questions or remarks, I think we can stop here for tonight, and I wish you guys a nice evening. Again, if I can help you in any way, even outside of these workshop time, feel free to send me an email. Yes, I can share the link of the online dictionary, econdoctor.com. I typed it in the chat box, /lexecon. It's working. You just double check. So for now, there are just a few definitions because I am adding the definitions chapter by chapter. But I expect that by the end of this new academic year, there should be around 1,000 definitions, probably around 1,000 definitions, perhaps a bit more, 1,200 definitions. And there will be games. And just like Econ Joker, you will be able to track your students' performance to see how well they do. I'm not sure yet what games I will design, but I will think about it, and I will ask other teachers what types of game they would like to use with their students. Okay, let's stop here for tonight. Have a nice evening, everyone, and see you next week. Bye-bye.